Hey guys, welcome back to the Restorantine series where I interview members, community leaders, and friends of Restore to hear about their experiences and their thoughts during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Now today, I wanted to talk to somebody who is near and dear to me and near and dear to our church, but you may not have seen for the last couple of months because most of the work that he does is behind the scenes, and that's our executive director, Chris Roberts. Now, I wanted to talk to Chris not only about what's going on in general with the church kind of nationwide, but I wanted to talk to him about something very specific, and that's mental health, because Chris has a background that I don't necessarily think most of us know that he has. And so I wanted to talk to him a little bit about that, find out what his thoughts are, and maybe help get some tips on how we can all maintain a sense of mental well-being even during this time. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. All right, so what's up, man?
It's just the first time I've worn a collared shirt since, early March.
Because of this video, you were like, I better put it on.
I want to get dressed up for the people. The wide reach. I'm a big fan of the podcast. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, big fan. I know. Thanks. You're one of my 15 regular viewers.
Absolutely. Seen everyone. Well,
yeah. I know. Well, nowadays, you're still there. You're the only audience member for the sermons when I preach them.
Yeah.
So you really don't have to get dressed up to sit in the sound booth.
I put on pants, so it's a big move these days.
Yeah, in quarantine life, that's like, wow, today's going to be a busy day.
Yeah, well, I don't know about you, but it throws off my week, because for the past however many years I've been doing church stuff, it's Sundays when you go to work, I do things, but now we do what I would do on a Sunday on a different day if we don't mind giving out those secrets.
Yeah.
And so it's like Saturday is like, do I have a meeting? Is it Tuesday? What day is it?
Yeah, I know. It's like, and I mean, that's thrown off my garbage schedule, which because every time we have a staff meeting, I have to get up and run and take out the garbage because I forgot it was Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's weird. It is weird. So what are you doing today? The same thing you did yesterday and the day before that?
Yeah, check some emails, do some work, prep some stuff, and then, watch TV all day.
Exactly. Well, and then it goes into like editing mode for Sunday, and then rinse, lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. And it's weird not having like a location-based schedule, meaning, okay, I'm working here and I'm still in the same room, still doing something else. Now I'm having dinner,
Right. And even time, that you are working, you're like, oh, I have to get this done during this window. And then you realize, wait, but why? Like I can do this during that later window, like it's not gonna, it's, it's not just location, but it's like just general calendar schedule is like gone.
Yeah. Well, it's that whole thing of like having to get into work mode. Like for me, I do it I put on my shoes to go to work. I am stuck at the other side of the room, but.
Right. Well, that's why I know, and I've said this on this very series of videos, but that's why we have the office space where it's like you go into the office space and you work in the office space. Or now we've been using the camper. So you work in the camper and you can lock yourself off. Yeah. It's like Superman's Fortress of Solitude. Isn't that what it was called? Didn't he have the Fortress of Solitude where he went when he was like, I need to be by myself?
Yeah, it's at the North Pole, I think.
Yeah. Well, I have mine, but it's my driveway.
You have a long drive. You can put it at the end of your driveway, so it's as far away from your house.
That's true. I'm sure my neighbors would love that even more than they love it already. This is not, well, actually, maybe the Fortress of Solitude leads into the main thing I wanted to talk to you about today, because I think that Superman had a Fortress of Solitude so that for his own mental health. And I wanted to talk to you about mental health.
It's good. It's a good topic.
Yeah, but not because I'm concerned for your mental health, but because I think that you have a lot of insight into mental health, starting with the fact that this is actually what you were trained in, but I don't think most people know that. So why don't you tell us what your degree is in?
I have a master's degree in biblical counseling from Dallas Theological Seminary in Dallas, Texas. It's the best seminary in America uh, because I went there and paid a lot of money for that degree.
Exactly. So you have to say that. You should
Exactly.
have put your. You should have put your. Do you have your degree anywhere? You could like slap it on the wall behind you.
I think I know where it is. Uh,
Is it in a
it's in a
frame?
box. No, I'm not that guy.
Mine's in a frame, and I am that guy, but I don't know where it is. Now I just realized when I brought that up, I'm like, I don't actually know where I. I think I took it out of the old office at that old building that we used to suffer in.
Well, it's also weird having a biblical counseling degree from a seminary because depending on state, because states are all different, I could be a licensed counselor, and depending on what the state requirements are, because the states are different. I said it twice. But also, it's from a seminary, so it's like, oh, you just teach from the Bible. It's like, no, it's a full thing of talking about abnormal psychology and all the weird things that we get into as people, and so
Yeah. So you spend
not
4 years studying how our brain gets unwired or
yeah,
like our wires get crossed or whatever.
asking the question why people do what they do.
Yeah.
And think,
So that question is, I think a lot of people have brought up the mental health implications of COVID, right? Just living, whether it's the stay at home orders or whatever. So, but what do you think are the biggest challenges? What do you think are the biggest mental health risks that people are facing because of kind of the whole pandemic, the whole thing?
well, other than just the anxiety of, am I going to get it, or someone I love going to get it, there is just this weirdness of the world we're living in where everything feels off kilter. Um, and it's not, we've lived, for most of us, this is the first time, like the closest we've had it to this is we had a bad snow day. We were snowed in for 3-4 days, maybe a week, but it's nothing that has changed our lives so completely for 2 months now. Um, and so I think a lot of people are experiencing for the first time like depression,
Mm.
that angst of not being able to do what you want to do, or it's, why should I get out of bed? I'm going to be in my house the whole day. And when you have other responsibilities like feeding kids or making sure they're caring for other people, kind of exacerbates that because we neglect taking care of ourselves because we're all that, we could fall into that martyr mindset of, I have to do this for my family, or I have to do this for other people, and never take the moment to take a breath and think for ourselves.
Well, you mentioned a few weeks ago, something you said that stuck with me was that um, that people who have experienced depression or anxiety in the past actually kind of have a leg up on the rest of us going into this because they can identify it and they've probably understood and gone through some coping mechanisms. Whereas if you've never experienced that, you don't really even know how to identify it when you are in the midst of it.
Right. Well, yeah, I think a lot of people have this mindset of something like depression being like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh yeah, things are terrible. They're always mopey, but it's really more like this curve of ups and downs and ups and downs. And so when you have experience with that, you can see those things that are like, oh, I'm noticing this, I'm getting bad, I'm about to crest a hill. I better do something to maybe not prevent it, but lessen the impact of it. And that could be, any number of things, and it's coping mechanisms. And so people who have been through those things before know the signs of when it's like coming up and know when to, oh, I need to do such and such to prevent a full flow, ride down the hill.
Mm-hmm. What are some, if, we've experienced that, and I think everybody that I've talked to for the most part has experienced some level of depression or anxiety since we've gone into this thing. What are some tools and tips that we can just general tools and tips we can use to kind of get us out, if those exist, without knowing specific details?
Yeah. Well, I think a huge part of it is just talking to your friends and family. This is a very isolating time. you are stuck with the people you live with. That's about it, unless you're, breaking the rules and risking everybody's life. You know,
How do you really feel?
um, it's your family or your roommates or whoever you may live with, and so they might not always have the answers you need, and so you can reach out further. We all have phones and the internet and have ways to talk to other people that aren't just with us all the time. And getting that fresh perspective is huge, because I'm sure there's times when, you are overwhelmed with your kids, or, oh, so-and-so is driving me crazy. What are they going to do? And talking to someone who's not in your situation, who's not actively mad at your kid right now, and there's like, yeah, they're probably freaking out too.
Yeah.
And when you're going through something, reaching out to someone, even if they might be going through the same thing, so you have that camaraderie of going through something together, or they're having a good day and can kind of talk you back from where you're going.
Yeah. Well, that's something I had written down in my notes of things I wanted to talk to you about. Was you say you've been doing the weekly devotionals every week for the church, which we've gotten so much positive feedback on. People are really enjoying them. It's speaking to where they're at. But the thing you close it out with the same line every week, which I may misquote it, but I think it's socially distant does not mean relationally distant. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that really seems like that's kind of what you're talking about right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's, especially in the church can be weird, where you end up having like your Sunday friends or your small group friends where you only see them there. And so it's weird to talk to them outside of that, or you have that, when you're a kid and you see your teacher at the grocery store, it's like, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. And then you're like, I forget your name.
Yeah. You're still friends. You can still have that relationship, even if you can't be face to face. And I think, I feel bad for all the like capital E extroverts out there that want to be around people and want to see each other and can't right now. And it's just finding those ways to connect, text someone, make a Zoom call or your platform of choice. There's ways to connect. You have time, write someone a letter and put it in the mail.
Yeah. Yeah. The postal service still works. Yeah, it's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking about, which is not a good way to listen. I know you could tell me, like, you shouldn't be thinking about the next question while I'm currently talking about this one, formulating your response. But I did. So there's not good active listening, but what it brought to mind was, we can talk to people who are in our own area. You're talking about Sunday friends, church friends, or whatever, but there's also something really beneficial about talking to people who are in other areas of the country and recognizing that. I think it can feel very overwhelming to us. It's almost more overwhelming when we think about it in the small way and less when we think about it over the big way, even though we can't fix the size of it, but knowing that, hey, we are really all in this together. Mm-hmm. What was I going to say? Yeah. What other things do you think are that we can do just as people, anything else that would be helpful? I mean, is there levels of awareness we can have about our own mental health, things we should be looking for, triggers, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. I think just like checking in with yourself, and even if it's weird, like, remember like the old Facebook prompt, like, how are you feeling today?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like that, just asking yourself that, checking your routine. Is it too routine? Do you need to do something to interrupt your day? Having some sort of physical activity is important. So it's not just, well, I sat in this chair for 12 hours today. Maybe I should at least walk to a different chair. Or, when things were first ramping up, there was one time I was like, I haven't left my apartment for 3 days. Maybe I should just go outside and get some sun.
See what's out there. Be like, the world still exists.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just checking in with yourself, or asking someone else how they're doing, is huge. And actually asking, because we have that we've always heard about, it's like, hey, how you doing? I just say fine so we can get on with the conversation.
Yeah.
Ask the people you're with, how are you? Are you doing okay? Anything bothering you today?
Yeah, and that's something that we can all be doing for each other. I mean, that's like a real community aspect of battling and kind of fighting against those mental health concerns as they come up, is just being willing to call it out before the other person even brings it up. How are you doing? And giving them a space to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'm going to ask you to switch hats a little bit. And I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I'm gonna, because I know we've talked about it a lot, and I think you have a lot of insight. And I've asked most people who are in ministry, and if you really have watched all the videos, then you would know this, but it's sort of the question of, what's the long-term outlook on this thing for the church? What do you think we're supposed to be taking away from this as a church, either from an organizational perspective or community perspective? What are some things that you are seeing that you're like, okay, we should take this with us?
It's a big question.
I know, that's why I asked it.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will depend on like the area and the church you're in. I think a lot of medium-sized churches are going to get really hurt by this, because big churches hopefully have some, war chests to rely on that they've saved up, and some small churches, like I used to work in this ministry, and we would tour around doing like speaking engagements, and we would go to small churches where it's like, we'll do a love offering, whatever you can give, thank you, and small churches always stepped up way more than the big churches. Because I think in large churches, there's always someone else that can do it. It's always like, oh, the Joneses are super rich, we should rely on them and talk to them. When it's the smaller churches and like churches restore size, where we need each other. We can't just like, oh, Uncle Dave will take care of everything. We are in this together. I think that a lot of churches are going to have people that have to find new jobs, because they can't support their children's staff of 12 people. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be really hard, because whenever a recession type thing hits, the church is usually on the back end of places to recover, because when people are unemployed, they have nothing to tithe from, and that's okay. We understand that, but I think it's going to be hard for a lot of those churches. And the other, probably the scary thing for me, is people getting comfortable on their Sunday mornings, like or people that have been going to church for 20 years, for as long as they can remember. This is the first time they've actively not gone on somewhere on Sunday morning, and there's going to be some people that are just like, what, this is pretty nice. I don't mind watching in my pajamas, because I can always watch it later, because hopefully the technology sticks with a lot of churches where it becomes a normal thing, rather than when we were first starting and people are scrambling. And I'm sure, I know I got calls, you got calls of like, hey, how do we do this? Is a video,
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of steps, and that's all probably bounded by when we could actually start meeting together again. Because there's a lot of churches that are going to jump the gun, and I know you don't want to get political, but there's people like, the government's stepping us down. Why can't we do it? And it's the same as like being told to stay home when there's a tornado. No one's like, you know what? They're not going to stop me from going outside just because it's windy.
Yeah. There is, like you said, it's a big question. And, a couple things that come out of that, I think, are, number one, you're right that trying to answer the question of what should stick with us or what will stick with us or what does the future look like is predicated on, well, when do we get back? Because that's going to make a big difference. If it's 3 months or 6 months or a year, that's going to change the dynamics of how it impacts everybody. But I think, you mentioned something about the commitment level. And I think the recurring theme that I've heard from other pastors from the start of this is the emphasis on community. that if there was a strong community there to begin with, that strong community will continue to maintain. And if people didn't have community, or maybe they thought they did, but all of a sudden it's pulled back because we have to, and all of a sudden it's exposed that maybe I didn't have the community I thought I did, and people might be seeking that out more. And in fact, I saw somebody, I think I was reading this from a person I follow who's not a believer, and they made the case that the reason that this has been so difficult for the United States is because we moved from an individualistic society where I get to do what I want to a communal society where I have to do what's best for everyone else overnight.
Yeah.
And it was such a drastic shift for us that a lot of people really couldn't handle that. But hopefully, again, going back to that community, what comes out of this then is an additional reliance on community. Like hopefully when it's not all done, we all go, oh, good, now I can serve my own best interests again.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully we go, oh, okay, we recognize that as an American society, we've become way too individualistic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen similar things, just talking about how we can be in this together, and how you see it a lot with our lack of a social safety net in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Because until, 3 months ago, unemployment was for losers that lost their job.
Yeah.
There's that mindset where it was this super negative thing we don't need to fund it. We don't need to take care of it because people should all have their job and take care of themselves. And we have to get past that. I got mine, so you better get yours too.
Yeah. In fact, I think that it's occurred to me that one of the things that we should be thinking about as believers is, okay, we should be thankful if we have our, a job. We should be grateful that we continue to be employed, but we really need to be saying, okay, how do we take care of those who don't have that? And it's so funny because and I say that sort of in contrast to some of the things the church is railing on or focusing on right now, when what I think is, what we need to be focusing on is how do we help those who didn't have a safety net or whatever, because that's going to be the area of rebuilding. If you use the language we use it on Sundays, that's going to be a rebuilding effort that we really need to invest in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate your time and for kind of like letting that conversation go down one of our rabbit trails as they typically do.
Good. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and make sure that you move from one chair to another at some point.
That's why I worked out this standing desk situation from a kind of wobbly projector stand.
Oh yeah. Well, it works. That's what I was going to mention, that you had that when you were talking about exercise. I was like, well, you stand up at your desk, so you're good to go. But all right. Well, thanks, man. And I'll see you on Thursday.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
See you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and both Chris and I really want to emphasize that we really need to pay attention to our mental health during this time. It's okay to deal with feelings of anxiety and depression, and if you're struggling with that, or if you're struggling with something that you've never really realized what it was before, you've never experienced before, reach out and talk to somebody, as Chris said, starting with friends, family, and even if you need to, there's many professional services out there to talk through stuff like that. More people are struggling with mental health right now than probably even know that they are. So we want to encourage you to seek out somebody to talk to if that is the case for you. Now, if you're enjoying this series of videos, please feel free to share them on Facebook, like them on YouTube, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if there's anybody that you want me to have a conversation with, please let me know, and I'll be happy to set that up. In the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.